A New Hope, Nier Chapter 77. You can read all of Azazyl's fan-fiction stories by subscribing to patreon.com/Azazyel. Finally, after a whole damn 30 minutes of high-intensity combat, the aquatic Grimm stopped being dredged up from the coastline, and with Goodwitch sending a message to our scrolls that our patrol was finished, both of our teams respectively collapsed onto a stone bench I made grow up from under the sands beneath us. Jake. I ran out of ammo for Crescent Rose, and now I won't have ammo to use in combat class. Ruby groaned, throwing a tiny tantrum as she kicked her obviously sore legs up and down atop the large bench I had set up for our teams. Ruby, with having you on the team, you guys got extra dust rations, and 2 of your team members don't even use dust at all. Young scolded, referring to how me and Jean didn't use dust at all, and even Pyrrha only used a bit for her combat rifle. And even Weiss used her own imported military-grade dust that fit her spellcaster's primary style of fighting. It's just that Ruby's massive anti-tank rounds she used in her sniper rifle used very expensive dust. Besides, my team all uses dust, and fucking Nora literally eats lightning dust like sugar candy. Young complained, with the eccentric Ginger only burst out into laughter at the blonde's complaints. Blake's team did have a pretty good team dynamic regardless of how Ren and Nora were partners, and Young and Blake were partners. If anything, it looked like they almost traded partners at times, as Ren and Blake would hang out reading quietly, while Young and Nora worked out or did other extreme things like prank wars or challenges like who could scare me more and get deleted out the window the hardest after waking me up in the morning. While Young and Ruby were comparing the prices and use of high-power explosive sniper rounds that could throw Ruby's several hundred-pound body and weapon around the battlefield in comparison to Nora's expensive grenade and lightning dust usage, I was just relaxing with Weiss, who was demurely just holding my hand as we stare off into the calming waves coming from the ocean. Vale's ocean is so different from Atlas's. Most of the time, if an icebreaker hasn't come through, you can't see the ocean at all. Just a flat dead expanse of white snow with a harsh sun reflecting off the endless white, she muttered as she laid her head on my shoulder. Not like we can swim in either ocean. I chuckled, with Weiss huffing. Actually, would you like to go swimming after we get back to Beacon? I offered honest interest, as I had grown up constantly swimming in either school gym class or the large lake that was nearby where I lived. But in the Nier universe, there weren't any large lakes I could swim in, and once I was allowed to travel around using a flight unit, the wildlife was already mutating beyond comprehension, and to say the least, I wasn't going to swim here in RWBY either. Because despite my power, I was actually not very strong underwater, nor have I even tried any of my elemental abilities underwater. I don't mind, but I won't go too deep as I don't really know how to swim, Weiss said somewhat wryly, but before I could offer to teach her, apparently the peanut gallery didn't like our flirting. Ugh. Just go get the room, you two, Young yelled and flipped her off in response. Actually, Weiss, do you even have a bathing suit? Pyrrha asked, and Weiss shook her head, stating how coming from Atlas, the land basically that was almost eternally a frozen hellscape, she never thought to even bring the couple she had in Atlas with her luggage. In that case, how about our team have a nice girls' day out, to get some swimsuits, as Goodwitch is going to leave us in Vale to return as we please with the rest of the day being free. Pyrrha offered. That would be nice, Pyrrha. Weiss grinned as she moved off of me to nod in the gladiator's direction. As much as I wanted to mutter about how every fucking day was a girls' day, with how our teams literally each only had one dude on it, I had to facepalm as Young grabbed Blake's hand and held it up in the air as though holding Blake's arm gave her some kind of command over her team. We are coming too. I and Ruby haven't gone swimming since last summer when our dad took us out to the small waterpark Patch has. With the rest of the girls making plans for going shopping for swimming apparel, I looked over to Ren and he firmly shook his head. Yeah, I am going to bow out on this one. I would prefer some peace and quiet, and both swimming in an enclosed room and shopping in general is out of my comfort zone. Well then. I guess I will just hang out on my own with some other friends. I shrugged as I made plans to hang out with my android some more and get the details about how their integrating of Atlas tech into their machinery was going so we could restart Yorha here in Remnant. As Weiss and the rest moved over to Blake's team side to discuss with Ruby and Young about what kind of swimsuit was best, and for the life of me I couldn't keep up with the discussion about certain cuts of fabric and styles, I instead was left on my section of the bench with Jean, who blushed at me focusing on her. How about you, Jean, you know how to swim? I asked casually, and surprisingly she nodded, saying how there was a pond on her family's farm, and she was taught how to swim in it, with how there wasn't any Grimm or anything in it, with how shallow it was. So got any fun tales about living with all your sisters? I asked, and she snorted. Yeah. We would literally fight over the best bras. With us all either growing or staying at a certain cup size, we had this one bra. It was kind of old honestly, but it was so perfectly broken in that it would cup our large sizes even when ran or slept perfectly. Jean mused almost nostalgically, and I couldn't help raising an eyebrow as she gestured to her own large breasts, which I had a pretty good idea of, seeing how similar Jean literally looked like her namesake from FGO. Surprised you didn't take the super bra with you to Beacon, I muttered, and for a moment I saw Jean's face freeze in a "what the hell were you thinking" expression as she realized, with her literally fleeing her hometown and running to the capital, that she could have gotten away with her heist scot-free. Damn it, Jean. She groaned, with her large blonde braid being thrown around as she covered her face and rocked back and forth in outrage. Finally, after Jean was done with her episode, she smiled over at me and patted my knee. Jake, if you have any other great ideas, please tell me, as this humble farm girl forgets things, you know. All right, Jean, no problem, I muttered, giving her a head pat, and then I stood up from the stone bench, stretching as I took in Blake's team as well as my own team, just talking and getting along. Then, looking further around, I saw A2 talking with Goodwitch, as well as the other Beacon teams recovering from their battles or having already left the beach to go explore Vale. Well, time to go get my own swimsuit, I muttered as I walked over to Goodwitch and 2B to give them a warning of where I was going, as A2 would literally have Vale's entire camera system hacked by the twins and 60 to find me if I decided to go off on a walk in Vale streets, as the androids had come across all the crime videos and documentaries of the old Earth and thought cities were places where shootouts were an everyday thing despite proof otherwise. That was the only downside about androids. They believed the data placed in front of them without question until evidence stood out to decry it, and so far, with the Faunus riots not even being a decade old, the androids were scared some crazy revolutionary would somehow string me up or something.